Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, okay, but maybe that's too loud. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. We appreciate those that are in attendance in person here at our Performing Arts Center and those that are on Zoom. This meeting tonight is our public forum for the school board, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people still coming in the door and signing in, and so we'll give them some space. There's lots of room up front, so if anybody wants to come sit up front, we'll welcome them. We're going to have a little explanation of what we're doing tonight, and then we're going to do a little explaining of the capital levy, and then we're going to answer some questions and address some common misconceptions. I want to let everybody know that this meeting is being viewed on Zoom, and also it's being recorded so that people can watch it at a later date if they miss this meeting. The published meeting notice stated that questions from our Zoom participants must have been received by 3 o'clock yesterday to be addressed tonight at this meeting. However, you can still submit questions via email tonight and you can email them to info@aps16.org. That's info@aps16.org. And then your questions will be answered in the next few days following this forum. I want to move the slides. Oh, and the people that are in person, there is a form on the table. You're welcome to write your questions down and then turn them in, and then we will address those questions tonight during our question and answer portion. So be thinking of your questions. We have already received several questions in advance, and so we will get to those first, and then we'll have time for more questions. All right, so the next thing I wanted to let everybody know is that we had a capital levy in November, and it did not get the required votes to pass. And so I wanted to let everybody know that we wanted to know what our community and our taxpayers and our voters felt about that and what our next step should be. So we sent out a survey after that election in November, and we had about 700 responses. And those responses we used to kind of gauge the reaction and the recommendation that our stakeholders really want us to take. And so that's why we have decided as a board to move forward with another capital levy, because there was an overwhelming response from that survey to run the request again to the taxpayers. But also another overwhelming answer that we got from the surveys was that it was just too much money, and they felt really conflicted about having to pay so much taxes. And so another thing that the school board decided was to reduce the amount of the ask. And so there was a reduction of the size of the building construction plans, and we were able to trim $6 million from the plans. And so that's why there's a new levy that is a smaller ask. And we will get into more specific details about all of these things. But I just want everybody to know that we do extremely value your feedback and your input. We're all in this together. We know how much people care about their schools and their children and their education and their safety. And we want to be partners with our community. And we hear you and we see you, and we're right here with you. We're all taxpayers too. And so we just wanted to make sure that you know that we really appreciate the feedback that we've gotten and will continue to get. And just wanted to make that real clear. So tonight, this is the questions for the board slide. where it talks about the instructions for tonight's capital presentation. So if you have a question, we do want to hear it. So you can write one question on each sheet. If you have multiple questions, please use multiple papers and either place them in the tray or give them to one of the lovely cabinet members that are collecting the questions. Gary Sable, our Director of Communication, and Carrie Henderson-Burke, our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, will read each of the questions, and the board and the support staff will provide the answers. We will answer them one at a time, as much as we can during the time that is allowed, but we want to respect your time and everybody's bedtime, and if we're unable to answer your questions, we will email them out after the forum in the next few days. So please make sure that you have signed in with your email address so you can get those questions answered if you're one of our attendees on Zoom. Next, we'll have our board team and our support staff introduce themselves. And I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Mary Levesque, and I am the current president, and I represent District Number 4. And we'll go this way.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Diamond. I'm representing District 1.
Sherry Kelly, District 2. I am Nicole Watts for District 3.
Hi guys, I'm Erica Knapp and I'm representing I am a director for District 5.
And also our vice chair and Sherry's our ledge rep. And then Dr. Sweeting is going to introduce herself and the rest of the cabinet members.
Good evening, I'm Chris Sweeting, the superintendent, and I have with me cabinet members and other staff that are helping tonight. So as already mentioned, Gary Sable, our voice of Arlington, Director of Communication, he will read questions for us. And then we have Carrie Henderson-Burke, who is the Executive Director over here of Teaching and Learning. She will read the other questions, kind of divide them in half. We have Gina Zutenhorst, our Director of Finance and Money. She's going to be helping in collecting some of the questions, but she also might help in answering some of the questions when the board would like some help and support in answering those. And I have down at the end of the table, I have Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operation, and he's up here as a lifeline in answering some of the questions about, we had some questions about past and properties and things, so he's going to help us with that hopefully. And we have Eric DeYoung, he's over in the corner. He is the Executive Director of HR, Human Resources, and he's going to help collect questions as well. I have my assistant, my wonderful assistant, Debbie Montgomery, and she's there greeting you and answering questions as you need about what's going on in logistics. And who have I missed? Thank you, Annette. Annette's up there. She takes care of the VPAC, so appreciate her help as well. And Matt Jurek too, up in the box. So that's what we have.
Thank you. And I recognized a lot of faces in the audience. I think we have a lot of parents and community members here. So I think thank you for your taking the time to be here tonight. So we're going to go to the next slide, where I already mentioned a little bit about our revised proposal. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the different amounts are. So in the past, we asked for, I think it was 81 million, is that right, from our voters. And this time we're asking for 75 million from our voters to help pay for a $101 million project. And the reason that there's a difference is because we are eligible for state matching funds from our state construction assistance program. And so we were able to cut some of the amount that we're asking in response to a lot of the comments and concerns that people had about the amount of tax dollars that they would have to pay. And we're going to go more into that in a little bit, but I wanted to let everybody know and remind everybody that the ask is for 75 million for all of the people that combine, but each individual household, if their house is appraised at about 500,000, this would be $54 per month. Is that right? Do I have my numbers straight? $55 per month, give or take some pennies, but it's not a crazy amount that we're asking, that some people have said, I can't afford the $7 million a month or whatever exaggeration. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some of the truth and some of the fiction, and try to clear up some of the miscommunication, misinformation that's been out there. So tonight we're going to try to get all of our information out to you in a really clear manner, if I can stop being nervous. So why do we need to replace post-middle school? There's many reasons why we need to replace post-middle school. It was built in 1984, is that correct? 81, and Nicole's going to tell you all about post-middle school.
Post-middle school was built more than 4 decades ago, and it's beyond its useful life. Even with routine maintenance over the years, there are so many problems with the building that it would be cheaper to replace it than to renovate. Just some numbers that Erica kind of researched to renovate would cost $101,083,448. So, but it still wouldn't address the safety issues, the traffic congestion that occurs because of Eagle Creek Elementary and Post being so close, and the crumbling track and field that's not usable. So Post has significant building issues. It does not meet modern safety and security standards. There are multiple points of entry, which makes it unsecured, including the walkways. The 24 HVAC units, where one unit serves 2 classrooms, and one classroom where the HVAC is located has plenty of airflow but noisy, and the other classroom is quieter but the air quality is challenged. And we have been cited by the health department several times because of carbon monoxide levels being too high.
Post has significant ground issues outside the corridors, frequently flood. It's a very wet walk between the classrooms. Some call it the flood or Lake Post. As Nicole just mentioned, traffic flow is also a major issue. Pickup at dismissal time for all 3 schools, but especially for Eagle Creek and SBLC is very difficult and dangerous. So I know I was last week having a meeting and I just ended up parking on, I guess it was 5th, and walked to Post because I said, I don't want to contend with the bus and car traffic. So I'm sure I was not alone. I'm sure parents do that often. Slide 12. A new school would allow for several things. Modern safety and security features. So don't really have to worry about the fence around it because it will be already embedded in the building. Earthquake resistance, larger specialty classrooms, an efficient HVAC system, and outdoor improvements, including separate bus and car access.
As Mary talked about, we did listen to the community survey and the voters and tried to reduce the cost of the ask from the community. And we're able to do it by about $6 million. In turn, it ended up saving about $125 a year for the homeowners. And roughly it'll be about $654, $54 a month, sorry. Yeah, for 6 years. The other thing too is rebuilding also allows us to ask the state for matching funds because instead of renovating, we're getting a new building. We qualify for $25 million from the state, which brings the cost down to $75 million rather than renovating and trying to get it up to code for the $101 million. So that's another savings to the taxpayers.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about the HVAC and centralized heating system. This is comparing between Post and Howler Middle School. So you can see the picture here. So Post has 24 HVAC systems compared to an efficient system at Haller that you can see. And just the amount of energy that it takes to run those 24 systems, you can only imagine like how much energy that takes. And it's just, I don't want to say it's a waste because it is, providing for our students, but it's definitely a big difference between the two schools. And parts for repairing the HVAC at Post is difficult to find because the company that made the systems is no longer in business. So I've heard rumors that we're sometimes getting parts from eBay at times. And as has been mentioned a few times, we're cited by the health department for high carbon monoxide levels in some classrooms, just because the HVAC systems are not efficient enough to keep the airflow moving in those classrooms. Carbon monoxide. What did I say? Did I say dioxide? Carbon monoxide. Dioxide, okay. Okay, carbon dioxide, excuse me. We wrote down the wrong word. I think there was a typo, sorry.
The other thing too, since Post was built literally the year before I was born, the interwebs was not a thing quite yet. So the school is not really set up for the technology that we kind of need today. All the students have Chromebooks. Access to the internet is vital for education. As you can see in the picture, it is kind of a nest of cables trying to get the technology and internet to get the students access to the technology. So with the upgrade or with the new build, it would make it current for the technology and security and everything like that, rather than trying to run wires through ceilings and make things work.
Post has individual buildings with flat roofs, which are lower to the ground, making it much easier access for individuals to climb on. Flat roofs seem to attract those skateboarders, which can damage the roof and cause injury.
The gymnasium Post gym is more at risk for becoming unstable during an earthquake than any other building because it is the only school without steel framing. Seismic codes were different in 1981 than they are in 2025. This is a picture of the damage the bleachers have made to the gym floor.
Post has no interior hallways. The classroom doors all open to the outside elements. This is challenging for many reasons, but most importantly for safety. When Post was built, the state did not provide the funding for hallways. That is why Post doesn't have hallways, is that they cost extra and taxpayers couldn't afford hallways. Students get wet and cold with every passing period. With heavy rains, that big courtyard between classrooms is flooded. And you can see the difference between no hallways at Post and warm and secure hallways at Haller.
The track at Post is literally falling apart piece by piece. This is a safety issue for our students, and students cannot hold official track meets using the Post track. And you can see the difference in the picture. The district does not, one of the questions and misconceptions that we want to address is the district does not take care of Post. They're letting it fall apart. The district is taking care of Post. Regular and ongoing maintenance is occurring. And in fact, the district spends more money to take care of Post than any other school building in our district. In the past few years, we have installed new carpet, replaced some tiles, installed a security fence around the perimeter, and much more.
Another misconception that we've heard is that people don't trust the district and they don't believe that we have financial accountability. And I want to make it really clear that the school district is properly managed. Their funds are properly managed very strictly. That our district finance officer used to be an auditor for the state, and she runs a tight ship. She knows what the auditor needs and follows the most strict accounting practices, and has very clean books. Every year, our district is audited by the state, and all those reports are published on the state website. We have constantly been informed of our financial status at board meetings. We see our transactions on our board docs prior to meetings. We can see where each expense occurs. It is very transparent. It is open to the public. The money is carefully managed by a very good team, and there are many, many laws and regulations that we follow to the letter. The district also, when we were facing some budget cuts a few years ago, launched a budget advisory task force, and we wanted to engage our community, our staff and our families and parents and our community members in the difficult work to reduce our expenses as we were trying to spend less, as we were not having as many students, which equals less money coming in. So we had to balance our budget. We have a public hearing every year for our budget. We welcome feedback. It's all open to public record, and I don't know how to ensure trust other than to tell you you can come and see it anytime. It is very well and properly maintained.
Thank you. So the next question is, wouldn't it just be cheaper to remodel rather than rebuild? When I first came onto the board and the levies or the bonds were trying to pass for a new post, I actually talked to Brian Lewis, our director of operations, and asked the same question. There was an assessment done in 2014 that basically it said that post was in great need, and they did some other assessments over the next couple of years. And the cost of the just remodel was 101 million. And it was basically, when talking with Brian, just kind of a Band-Aid. It's not something that would last. It's something to just get us current and just kind of maintain. Also doesn't take into account the deficiencies, the traffic flow, the track and field. And so the rebuild would include all of these things and cost on paper the same. Even though we get that $25 million, it would cost $25 million less to rebuild rather than to remodel.
Why did the district build post without hallways? Well, as Mary already stated during our comparison pictures, hallways at Paul's, having no hallways at Post is very challenging. This California style school is not appropriate for the Pacific Northwest. I think we can all agree on that. With their current environment, and safety and security is essential. Several years ago, we did implement the fence, but that's a security issue, which is nice to have. But again, it's kind of a Band-Aid. It doesn't even compare to what Howard has with an actual internal hallway. We also feel that just the students themselves, their environment makes a big impact on their learning. And if they have to walk in those corridors outside class to class, and it's raining, and there's just, that mood in the air of like, gosh, it'd be nice to have everything enclosed. I'd feel safe, I'd feel warm. That says I'm cared for. And I think they want their community to send them the message that we care about them.
Just to add on to that, one of the reasons it was built without hallways was a cost reduction. Hallways are interior space, cost extra money. So this was kind of their solution to reduce taxes to the community back in 1981. And we now realize it's cold and rainy here. We didn't now just realize it, but this was done in an effort to reduce costs to the community, and it's not efficient, it's not safe. And we realized that. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why it was built.
I want to add something that we learned recently. We had a conversation with a community member that was on the board at the time that Post was built. And he shared with us that in 1981, the state actually paid for 80% of the cost of building a new school. That'd be awesome if they do that now. But because they paid for 80%, they had a lot more control of what you could do or can, put into the new school or not. Hallways were not on the list.
Okay, so the last question is, what about the contingency plans? And a lot of people have been talking about double shifting at Haller. So I just wanted to share that we do have contingency plans like double shifting at Haller or moving 6th graders back to elementary school and have only 7th and 8th graders at the one middle school, which would be Haller. But only if an event were to happen to close before the new school is built. And so an event could be something like an electrical fire in the small electrical room at Post that can't be repaired. An event could be an earthquake where, of course, all of our schools will be challenged, but Post is going to be more highly impacted than the others due to the vulnerable framing. And then an event could also be all or several of the 24 HVAC systems could stop working or not be able to be repaired. And we do need to plan ahead because the longer it takes to replace posts, the more likely an event is to happen.
Thank you, board members, for sharing some answers for our people about some of the common misconceptions. We're now going to move on to the question and answer portion of our meeting. And I want to remind everybody about that process. We have papers provided at the table. Maybe you've already gotten one and you've written down a question. A reminder that we want one question per paper. So if you have multiple questions, please don't list them out on one paper. Please put one question on each paper. And you can give it to the cabinet members that are collecting the questions. And Gary and Carrie, the Carrie and Gary team, will be reading the questions, and the board members and support staff will be answering those questions. If the time runs out and your question has not been answered, we will email the question answers to you after the forum. And if anyone is attending on Zoom, you can email your questions to info@asd16.org, and we will answer your questions via email in the next few days after the forum. So we already have some pre-sent in questions. And so I think we're going to move to those. Dr. Sweeting, do you have those handy? Oh, they have them. The Carrie and Gary. All right, Gary, go for it.
Okay, the first question is, why are Arlington schools taking in 700 Marysville kids? Are their families paying taxes for the post levy? Why are we spending money on them and overcrowding Arlington?
That's a great question. Dr. Sweeting, can I have the answers, all the numbers? Oh, right here, I got it. Thank you, Gary. So the question was about out of district transfers and tax dollars. And I wanted to correct that, that misconception that we do not have 700 transfer students from Marysville. Here's some numbers that we were able to research in advance. As of January 9th, 2025, we have a total of 775 transfer students across our district from all bunch of different districts. And we have also 252 students from Arlington that go to other districts. So I'm going to go through the breakdown of the 775 that transfer into Arlington schools. 7 come from Conway, 43 come from Darrington, 19 come from Everett, 142 come from Granite Falls, 22 come from Lake Stevens, 149 come from Lakewood, 345 come from Marysville, 4 come from Mount Vernon, 1 comes from Seattle, 1 comes from Cedro Woolley, 1 from Snohomish, and 42 from Stanwood. And I wanted to compare the numbers from last June of 2024. The total transferred was 700 with 298 from Marysville. So there has been an increase of 47 transfer students from Marysville. And then I want to talk a little bit about the tax dollars. While choice transfers do not pay property taxes, we do receive the state of law allocation for each of those students that come because the money follows the student. If we didn't have those 700 students from transfers, then there would be significant reductions in staffing because the student allocation for those 700 transfers represents about $7 million. Traditionally, we have always had transfer students from other districts. For example, in 2023, we had 700 transfers with 266 from Marysville. I hope that answers that question. Did I get it right, Gary? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
All right, I'm going to combine two questions because they're different questions, but they have to do with money going out that we're spending and money coming in that we're receiving. So question, why aren't we selling off all unused properties and anything else we have to cut the cost of the new school? And the second part, what things has the district done to cut costs, raise money, grants, requests for donations, Gates and Bezos, bake sales? So
These sound like finance questions to me. And so I'm hoping that we can phone a friend and have our trustee, Gina Zutenhorst, answer that with some specifics. And Brian too. Brian, do you need a microphone? And hopefully we can answer all the things we've done to cut costs and selling of the unused properties. Let's start with unused properties first.
Okay,
Brian?
in 2018, the district struck a deal with Miles Sand and Gravel to sell a piece of property called the Betcher property or Highway 530 property that the district had purchased in 1997 as a potential site for a new high school. And I think there's going to be some discussion about why we couldn't use that as a high school site at a later point in time. So in 2017, the board declared that piece of property surplus. We put it up for sale, began negotiations with Miles Sand and Gravel, and were able to strike a deal with them that resulted in a return of the cost of the original purchase in 1997. I do want to address, there's been a comment on social media about that we lost money on the sale. And if you think about the time value of money, then yeah, there's an argument there for that. But we also were able to negotiate a selling price that was equal to what we purchased it for. And it was also above the appraised value of the property when we sold it. So we were able to get a little bit more out of Miles Sand and Gravel to make that sale up in 2018. Now there was some contingencies associated with that, and that Miles was wanting to conduct a permit process where they could acquire permits to extract gravel from the site, and that process continues. The process is scheduled to end in 2025, and Miles is going to have to make a decision about whether or not they want to continue with the purchase at that point if they haven't received their mining permits. If they have received their mining permits, then they're obligated to make the purchase. They have paid us about $400,000 in earnest money since we began the sale process, and that money stays with us if Miles withdraws from the sale process. So we would get some of that money back, and then we would just if the sale doesn't occur, we would reignite the sale process and begin negotiating with another buyer.
Thank you, Brian. Gina, can you inform everyone about some of the cost-cutting measures and revenue increasing measures?
Yes, thank you. So for the past couple of years, we've kind of had to make some major changes in our budget. And some of those we implemented in 2023-24, which was last year. We went through a public process. We had our budget advisory task force committee, and we needed to make reductions of close to $6 million. And so we went through a formal reduction process on that with our board and implemented that. And then in 2024-25, the year that we're living in now, we continued to make reductions, making adjustments in our staffing to align with our enrollment as our numbers are coming in there. And so we've been living with those reductions because we've had to make a lot of changes that have been tough to live and operate under. But we have, we've done it. We've done without some things and really tried to dial it back. It has impacts. The things that we've had to do does impact the school environment and the learning community. So we've done those things. For revenues, we're always seeking and looking for things that we can be eligible for. We have federal grants, we have some state grants, we have some grants from foundations and different things like that. Bake sales probably is being a little facetious probably because most of that's going to be really not very much. But our schools in partnership with PTAs are always seeking and doing to raise funds. And when the state makes available funds that we could be eligible for, that we have to apply for, we go after it. So for example, our transportation department, busing costs are not funded in full by the state. And it's one of the big things that is going before the legislature as a priority that the funding for transportation programs is not adequate to actually run the transportation programs in most school districts. But safety net funds for transportation is a grant coming from the state. And we have compiled our data and put in for that. So hopefully we will be one of the ones who is awarded that. But that's just one example. We did receive an award of that grant last year. So we're hoping we can get that again. But those are examples, I guess. Is that enough for now?
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for being a phone a friend. I also want to add one more thing to what Gina said, that we had to cut some things, and you might have noticed that the school district is not providing school supplies anymore, and that some fees have gone up. Those are some other examples of some of our cost cutting and revenue increasing efforts. I also wanted to mention one thing that maybe wasn't clear at the beginning. That question asked, like, how come you're not saving enough money or not spending as much money? So how come you can't just build the school with the money you're getting? And I want to make it really clear that school buildings are only built with capital funds, and those capital funds are not provided any other way but by taxpayers. And so if you want a new building, the local taxpayers do have to contribute to the building of the building. There's not any other way. I hope that answered the question completely, Gary. Or Carrie. Carrie? So who's
Carrie, Gary, it's fine.
Gary?
There you go.
What's our next question?
Okay,
Gary?
the next question is, why do we build the BPAC, the building that we're in, instead of replacing post middle school?
I think we're going to ask Chris and Brian to answer this one.
And I think we were going to combine it. Was there a third one with it? These are ones that came online, so we kind of had a chance to look at them ahead of time. This third one was, it has to do, what have we done to cut costs? Oh no, that was combined with yours, Carrie, sorry. So we've, over the years when the school district has been managed about facilities, there's a document that is published and it's called the Facilities Master Plan. And when I arrived here in 2016. The most recent master facilities plan had been completed in 2014. And it's completed by community members, staff members, district staff, school staff coming together and looking at all of the facilities, identifying all the needs. And when I came on board, I was looking at that and trying to assess, what the needs are of the district as far as facilities. That document said that they developed in 2014 that post needed major renovation or replacement in the next few years. It said between 10 and 15 years. So in that document, it identified this need. It actually listed the same things that we're talking about right now. So I came on board in 2016. In 2017, through the Facility Advisory Committee, again, we did another study, a master facilities planning together with community members and staff and so forth. And again, it was determined that it was most cost effective, this was mentioned in 2014, to replace post middle school rather than renovate because of things that have already been said. So, and then again, in 2023, the committee, the Facility Advisory Committee came together and it was again recognized as that need. So in the BPAC, my understanding, and I wasn't here in the early 2000s, my understanding was it was presented to the voters, the new high school and the Performing Arts Center, and then maybe one other aspect was added to that. And it went to voters multiple times. And I think, and Brian, you can correct me here if you have more information. My understanding is that the final vote did not include the Performing Arts Center. And so it had just the high school. But I believe that as a result of construction, and you know, there's a bidding process and you go through that, I think there was enough money available from the construction of the high school to do, was it the foundation, Brian?
The shell of the building, not the interior.
Right. So for this building, there was enough there to build the shell, but the rest of this was through donations, through the people in the community selling the theater seats that you're sitting in, the pavers out in front. So at that time, the priority was the high school. At that time, there was double shifting going on at the old high school building on French. There was double shifting. So the priority at that time was that. And so it wouldn't have been right for us at that time to say, let's replace post because the high school was the priority then.
Chris, I just want to add that the recommendation to replace post was in 2014 and the BPAC was constructed in 2006, 8 years before
That's
the
true.
recommendation to replace post existed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next question. Why should residents pay money for the mismanagement of school money over the last however many years?
I think Erica wants to say this one. Go for it, Erica.
I'm trying not to get monoxide and dioxide mixed up again. So every year the state completes an audit, and the audit is thorough and detailed, and I've been able to sit in on the audit report meetings afterwards, and I can tell you it is very detailed. And sometimes it takes several months, and all of these reports are available on the auditor's website and through our district website. But one thing that I wanted to point out too, if we're talking about mismanagement of funds, is that on January 8th of this year, there was a town hall between the Mercer Island School District and the Issaquah School District and the Bellevue School District with the state legislators. So I just wanted to point out that school districts around the state are also having budget crisis because of state funding gaps. And I know that it appears as mismanagement, and so I guess I just wanted to point out that we're not the only ones that are struggling with the budget and the state funding gaps. It is all around the state. So we're hoping that with the districts coming together that we can get the state to amply fund our schools before more emergencies happen.
Right, Gary, did we answer that one adequately?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I'm going to read, I think this is an answer. I'm going to read anyway, just so folks know some of the answer or the questions are being asked. Why did ASD buy the Highway 530 site for the high school and then spend more money for the land where it is now? I believe Mr. Lewis addressed that. And then another question was, did Glen Eagle families not want to send their students that far down 530? And the last part of this was, did we lose money on the sale of the 530 site? Again, I think Mr. Lewis addressed that, but Brian, do you have anything else to share about that?
Yeah, I can add to that. In the district purchased the Betcher site in 1997. And in 1999, the State Growth Management Act came into place. And the State Growth Management Act limited where school buildings could be constructed. They had to be constructed within an urban growth area, and the Betcher site was not within the urban growth area. So the only kind of school construction that would be allowed there would have been an elementary school, and at that, it still would have required a conditional use permit from Snohomish County, and they're pretty stingy about handing those out, especially if there's a piercing of the veil, so to speak, where a building is constructed outside of the urban growth area.
Thank you, Brian. So Gary, I think we're ready for the next question.
Okay. The next one is two questions combined, but and again, I think this has been answered too, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why is ASD threatening and AM/PM split schedule to force us to vote yes is an empty threat? And why wouldn't we, or at what point will we, double shift at Howler? And again, I think this has been addressed already, but I just wanted the board to hear those questions.
Who wants to answer that one the most? I think Dr. Sweeting has some things to say, but Matt.
No, I'm passing it on.
Oh, or Erica. Hop it.
I can take it. So I did talk about the contingency plans. So we do want to talk about and have transparency about the contingency plans. That's the reason why we share them, because we don't want to have any surprises if or when something happens at post and then suddenly we're needing to move students all around and everybody's kind of getting displaced. So that's why we share that information. And then, as I shared before, at what point would we? And that would be if there was an urgent matter, as I shared, like the fires or the HVAC going out or the earthquake. So, yeah.
Can I just add that at no point are we threatening anything. We are talking about it, and there is a possibility that there would be a need in the future to do some kind of split schedule, but it's not on our plans right now. That it is last resort is plan D, E, and F. It is not our current plans, and there is a process. If a school needs to close, there is an RCW that explains how that process works, and we haven't started that process. We're not planning on closing post anytime soon. We are hoping that, cross your fingers, knock on wood, that nothing catastrophic happens at post and we're able to keep students attending there as long as possible until a new building is replaced and the kids just move in. I just want to make that real clear that it is, we still love post and we're still rooting for it.
Okay, the next question is, can we talk about enrollment? How are we planning for growth?
Brian, you want to talk about?
Sure. In 2020, prior to COVID, I know that's a bad word, but prior to that period of time, we commissioned a demographic study to help us understand where we were going in terms of our student population into the future through 2031 is the time period that we looked at. And again, this is all prior to COVID. The estimate of the demographer that we were on a pretty significant growth pattern to add about 1,000 students between 2021 and 2031. Well, we all know what happened with COVID. School shut down, society changed. We did lose about 600 students during that period of time. We're continuing to regain those students, and we're almost there in terms of pre-COVID population. But we're also seeing a much smaller or much slower growth pattern in terms of adding additional students. So we're not in a position right now where we believe that our buildings are not going to be adequate to support the number of students that we have through 2031. We are going to refresh that demographic study in 2026 to give us a more fine-tuned picture of what we think enrollment should look like into the future and what our accompanying building needs are. But right at this point in time, we have adequate facility. So this speaks to a potential misconception about why we're asking for a new post. The new post would have some additional capacity to it, but it would also have the ability to add a third instructional wing by placing utilities on the outside of the building so that we could access them to build a new wing if we needed it, and without disrupting the education that's going on inside of the new building. So we don't think that that's going to be happening at least through 2031, but we're going to take on a refresh of the demographic study in 2026 to clarify that.
Thank you, Brian. Gary, can you reread that question just for my brain? I don't remember the whole thing.
Gary could, if he had the page,
Carrie,
but I'm the one.
Carrie,
Gary. It was Gary.
Okay.
one of you.
Can we talk about enrollment? How are we planning for growth?
Does anybody want to add anything to that? I think we covered it. Okay, next question. Is it Gary this time?
It's Gary, yes.
Go
Okay.
Gary.
Okay, the next question is, and again, I think this has been addressed. This is one of the questions from the audience. What was changed to reduce the ask by $6 million, basically the November measure to the February measure?
Matt?
So we reduced some of the class sizes. Yeah, that's a, thank you. To be more specific. So we reduced building square footage, and removed some of the, I think it was like a gym or a weight room or something like that. Yes, it's square footage too. Okay, so we reduced 4 classrooms and 1 weight room. But like Brian said, we have the option for an addition later on. But that's where the money came from.
Just so you can think of this comparison. So currently, Post is 75,000 square feet. And then the first ask was we wanted it to be 120,000 square feet. But this, in the reduction, it's 101. So it's more than it currently is right now. And just to give another perspective to this, Howler is 88. Am I right, Brian? Just to check. Okay.
Did you want to add anything, Erica? No. Okay. It looked like you were thinking something, but okay. So we didn't change anything else. The original ask in November had a change to the bus loop, and we kept that in because we felt that was really important. So the board decided we had some options. Should we not demolish? Should we demolish? Should we add the bus loop? Should we not add the bus loop? How can we cut it? And we chose to make that change just to the square footage, nothing else for the project. I hope that answers that question. Next.
All right, this one has been addressed as well, but can you share more about the safety concerns at Post?
As we have said multiple times, the structural deficiency due to seismic activity is deficient. We have unsecured classrooms and walkways, which makes us a target for an active shooter situation. The HVAC system is deficient, causing poor air quality, and we've been cited for carbon dioxide issues. Some other things that kind of got brought to us was getting to class. We're getting wet feet. The water is turning into ice because of those open walkways. One ramp is an ADA safety hazard. No central locking in 47 different rooms if there is a lockdown. The sprinkler system doesn't cover the whole building. Some areas are without sprinklers. I asked my boys, who all have graduated from Post middle school and now are 2 of them are in the high school. And they said that they smelt mold. They were constantly cold during class time. That doesn't help with learning at all when you are dealing with needing to do those safety and needs for your body. So those were just a few. There was a few more that they kind of gave me that they remember not being able to have food in classrooms due to potential rodent issues. So These are all things that we want to avoid for our future students going to post.
Who's got the next question?
I do. Okay, so this is another one from the audience. Where can low-income seniors go to get help filling out paperwork to get reduced property taxes? Can the district help provide the support? And before I send them to the board, I just wanted to let folks know when you walked in, there was this flyer that was on the table. The bottom left-hand corner talks about reduced costs for homeowners. And if you scan the little QR code or go to asd.wednet.edu, the top part says post capital levy. There's a whole section on the FAQ page that talks about how the senior citizens can apply to the county to get that break in taxes. So, but want to send to the board.
You can also get help at the library, possibly. That's a really great question. And thank you for providing the answer to the question at the same time. We appreciate that. There's lots of assistance available.
Can I add to that, Mary?
Please.
So it's not just seniors, and seniors is according to the definition for that Snohomish County uses, and this is all from the Department of Revenue in the state of Washington. It's people that are 61 or over. So that's their definition for eligibility for age. But there's also another category for service disabled veterans. If you're 100% service disabled veteran, you can also apply for an exemption from the local school taxes.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, next question. Is it Carrie?
It is indeed.
I'll get this right by the end.
All right. This community member says, I know I want to vote yes for funding for school. How do we vote? Will we receive ballots in the mail?
So as of today, the ballots were mailed out on January 23rd, and voters can register or update their registration at votewa, so WA capitalized.gov by February 3rd. So that gives a little time between the election date, or they can do that in person up to February 11th. Ballots can be returned by mail, no stamp needed, or at one of our 4 official drop boxes, open 24/7 until 8 p.m. on election day. There's a very handy election box over by the library I constantly use. So that should answer that question.
Next question. Is it Gary?
It is Gary, yeah. And this one was actually sent to me because I think this attendee writes like I do. I always type everything too. So thank you for typing and sending this to me. So the question is, in 2023, I had 1 child graduate from high school. Currently, I have 2 children enrolled, 1 in elementary school and 1 in middle school. I also have 1 child who will begin school in 2026, and I have dedicated considerable time to volunteering for Arlington's youth through various means. I purchased my home in Arlington in 2013, primarily to ensure a quality education for my children. At that time, the school district's test scores exceeded the state average by 15% or more. However, 12 years later, K-5 scores are at the state average, while middle school grades 6 through 8 scores are below the state average. This trend is not school specific, however, has shown lower scores than posts in certain areas. This suggests the problem is not solely facility related. Considering that Washington state educators rank 5th nationally in overall compensation and 2nd in starting salaries, my question is this: if I support the construction of a new post-middle school, how will this address the fundamental issue of student achievement and ensure a quality education for all of our children?
Thank you. So yes, absolutely. Test scores are down, but test scores are down across the state. Unfortunately, we had a board meeting a couple months ago where we were looking at Snohomish County schools, and we've seen a dive in test scores after COVID. I know Arlington School District, almost every board meeting, it feels like we're working on strategies to kind of develop and build up those test scores again. Coming up with all kinds of innovative ways, working with teachers in the, they're coming to the board meetings, telling us what they're doing. So we're trying to figure out ways to also bring those test scores up. So definitely hear you. We looked at those scores as a board and we're like, what happened? Yeah, and obviously COVID, but it's just very the depth of how it did impact the kids, and trying to come back from that. We're hopeful, and we are making strides to bring those test scores back up and bring education back up to where it was.
Wanted to add that our students are more than test scores. And what we noticed is that I don't know if it's like what COVID had to do with it, but in our healthy youth survey, we have found that our students are using substance and having challenges with suicide ideations that are well above Snohomish County's levels and the state. And this is concerning. So whatever reason, the mental health needs of our students, it could be affecting that. So we have spent quite a bit of time, a very specific talk and conversation about what can we do to help the mental health situation of our students. In other words, how can we help them feel safe, not just physically in a building, but emotionally and socially. And so we've been struggling with this and we've been grappling with this, but we are making some gains. We have connected with the county on some really cool grants, bringing in mental health counselors into our buildings and in every building, just pieces of time, not all day in some cases, but working on that. So the test scores are academic rigor and being engaged in rich learning is essential, but you can't have that separate from a safe and caring and healthy environment in that whole child approach. So we have been looking at the multi-tiered systems of support. We've been looking at universal design for learning. We have so much more to do. And that's what that question describes is what our job has, that's our mission. And we have to deal with it holistically. And we have more to do, but tonight, in talking about post, that community there, the teachers and the students are vibrant. And when I say we only would close it or move kids out of there for an event, I mean that because we would never want to separate that group, that spirit of post middle school, unless we absolutely had to. And the longer we wait to take care of the building and replace it, the event is more likely to happen in time. So when we share that information, it's just to have eyes wide open that that's a possibility. But it's when those students, like when we put new carpet in there, the staff told me when we put new carpet in there in the entryway and the students walked in there, it's like they had new clothes. It was awesome. They felt just a different feeling. So we have to tend to the test scores, but they will increase as we take care of all of these other things as well.
Thank you, Chris. I want to also say that I feel strongly about this too. And I moved here to Arlington because of the great schools. And I've been raising my 6 kids here. And this is absolutely one of our paramount hopes and desires is that every kid is learning and achieving. And also we need a dry building. So Erica.
Can you hear me? Okay. Real quick, I know that we are all concerned about education and test scores, and as has been mentioned, we look at that almost every board meeting, but I want to say that when it comes to how will post address student achievement, is that one school in the whole district, if something happens at one school, it will affect the whole district. And so when kids have trouble learning, if their feet are wet or if they're cold because the HVAC isn't working, but if something goes down, it's going to cause a ripple effects. That's why we talked about the contingency plans. So as we bring that up, then it also will have a positive effect on the district.
Thank you, Erica. All right, do we have another question, Carrie?
We do indeed. What is the age of the other schools? In other words, will they need to be replaced soon after post? And what is the projected life of the new school?
Sounds like a Brian question to me. Is everybody okay if we ask Brian?
So I'm going to address the second question first. And there's no reason for us not to expect to get 50 to 100 years out of a new structure. That's my expectation for Arlington High School. This building is built in a much different way than the existing post-middle school. It's more modular. In other words, it's easier to remodel. It also it's not filled with asbestos. Asbestos in the current post building makes remodeling very difficult and very expensive. Like I said, I don't see why we shouldn't expect a 50 to 100 year lifespan out of the replacement building. The ages of our other buildings, the oldest building, besides post middle school, it could be this one. It could be.
Eagle Creek.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Eagle Creek. Now I've got my head back on. Eagle Creek, 1989. Kent Prairie, 1991. Arlington High School, 2003. Pioneer, 2000. I think Pioneer's about 2004, 2005. Haller, which was the old Arlington High School in part, 2006. And SVLC is a conglomeration of portable buildings that have a wide range of ages. Again, the key difference between post and all of those other buildings is steel frame and no asbestos. We're focusing tonight on a capital levy to replace post, but in 2020 and in 2024, we also passed capital levies to extend the useful life of our other school buildings. And we're on the tail end of projects from the 2020 capital levy. Just as an example, some of the projects that we did with the 2020 capital levy was we added high efficiency boilers, gas boilers, which at Kent Prairie and at Pioneer Elementary. Now, that's not exactly exciting unless you're a nerd, a building maintenance nerd like me. And what that means to me is that we don't have to spend as much on maintaining those boiler systems in that building. And we also don't have to spend as much on operating them because they're higher efficiency. And those boilers are going to last forever. They're high quality pieces of equipment. This building, with the 2020 capital levy, we added 9 classrooms onto the end of the C wing. Also added a scene shop here and remodeled the administrative area to add a secured entryway. And just by that simple addition of 9 classrooms, we're able to meet a population crunch, a squeeze that was happening. There were no available classrooms in this building. We had no space. We were actually moving people into closets for office space so we could use their office area for a classroom. So there's no reason for us to think that any of our existing buildings other than post will not survive another 50 years on their own. That's independent of any kind of population growth that might require us to add a new school building. But again, like I said before, we're not seeing that in our near future.
Thank you, Brian. You are our favorite nerd. We love it. How old is President's? I don't know if I heard that one.
President's, I believe, is 2005.
All right, next question. Is it a Gary?
I have
Is it
one that
Carrie?
came online, but Carrie, you want to give more? that
Sure.
came from here?
With reducing the cost, this has already been addressed too, but it's a good review point. With reducing the cost, what was taken away in that $6 million decrease, and how will it allow for the growth Arlington is seeing?
We reduce square footage, and in the plan, we have the option for an addition of another wing. Yeah, but I was just doing the square footage this time. Thanks, Mary.
This is like trivia night. It's four classrooms and a weight room. I got it. Next question, Carrie.
All right, how can people get involved with the Yes campaign?
Well, I want to do a little disclaimer. At this event, we are bound by the PDC rules, so we can't talk about campaign events or activities. there is somebody that is here that is on the Citizens Committee that can talk to you more about that, but we are bound by law to not talk about the campaign efforts, to ask people to vote one way or another. Tonight's meeting is just about information only, just facts. And any kind of persuasion is a separate activity and it can be at a different time in a different place, but not on school property or with staff on clock hours. So I just wanted to say that really fast, but there is somebody that can answer those questions. Did I answer that question without answering that question? Okay, next question.
Okay. In early 2020, when the bond was put forth, the project would have been 83 million. In early 2024, the project was 95 million. Then November 2024, 106 million, 81 million to district, 25 million to state matching funds. Now it's $75 million to district with 25 in state matching funds, totaling 100 million. Why is the project cost changing so dramatically, and why is the 25 million in state funding not being used to offset costs rather than increase project scope?
Inflation. So that's a big one, is the inflation cost over. So the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost regardless. This is another, I was like, Ryan, this is all you.
$4.3 million per year in escalation costs.
So if we built it back when we first asked, it would have been a lot cheaper. But now we get.
So
Brian?
the ask to the community is also fluctuating because of changes in our eligibility for state matching funds. And prior to November of 24, we were only eligible for $5 million in state matching funds. The state legislature changed the rules around state matching funds, essentially quintupling the funding that's available. And that's why we're eligible now for $25 million. So the combination of reducing the square footage and the additional state matching fund eligibility has reduced the ask to the community to $75 million.
So if we have to ask every year, it'll keep going up. What was it? 4.3 million every year. And this is a 6-year project. So we're anticipating the inflation, the cost escalation over those 6 years. It's included, right? It's built
That's
in.
included in the current cost estimate.
That was a really good question with lots of math in it. We love math. Who's got the next question? Gary?
I'll do one more, and then Gary can take his turn. I'm hogging the mic. Could you please clarify how the property tax levy works in relation to property value increases? Specifically, does the levy rate of 74 cents per thousand of assessed valuation remain constant even as property values rise? Or is it adjusted annually? And there's a part B, but I think that's a good meaty question. So
That is a
answer
really
part A
good
for us, would
meaty
you?
math
Yeah.
in the real world question. Is Gina available for helping answer this question? Because this one is a little bit tricky and it does need a little
I'll
bit.
try.
Thank you.
I'll try. I haven't articulated this in a while, and Brian is also really good at it. I think he's probably even better at it than I am. The tax levy rate is not, we do not levy the rate. We get authorized by our voters for the dollar amount on the ballot, the 6 million or the whatever amount per year dollar amount. That's what we're authorized then to levy. The county spreads that out across all the property values. So if we have more property value, either because your value went up and or there's more people in to also spread that debt over or levy over, then that affects everyone's in the community's tax that they would pay. So, and it's an annual thing based on the assessed values get quantified each year at the county.
So if we have more people move in and more houses being built, people's taxes will go down.
Correct.
Okay.
The rate that they pay potentially could go down. But if your value of your house goes up, there's many factors that are coming into play. So it is not a rate that we levy. We put our rates on the levy ballot information as a means of folks to be able to at least have an idea of what the rate might be and try to quantify that for themselves, knowing what their current house value could be. But also remember that it's not just homeowners, it's all the property in the whole community, not just homeowners. But yeah,
Businesses also.
businesses, yeah.
Thank you,
construction.
Gina. I love
I
math.
hope that.
That was
good,
great,
but
Gina. Can I
Brian,
add something?
Yes, please do.
So school districts are unique in Washington in that the levy, schools can only collect the amount authorized by voters. So, for example, this levy is $75 million. The school district cannot collect more than $75 million across that 6-year period. How is that different? Other taxing entities like the city or the county or a sewer district or any other junior taxing district, they establish a rate. And regardless of changes in property value, they collect that rate. So when property values go up, the other taxing districts do collect more money because they've established a rate, not an amount, but a rate. When property values go up for school districts, that doesn't mean there's more money coming into the school district because the state doesn't allow school districts to collect a rate. They allow us to collect a voter approved amount.
All right. Was that enough for part A of this two-parter?
It is, and I think it largely addresses part B as well, but I'm going to read it just to make sure that we address all components of the question. If the levy rate is fixed, what measures are in place to address any potential surplus in funding if the levy amount is collected more earlier than anticipated? Excuse me. As an example, my property assessed valuation has increased 55% over the past 5 years. Should I expect to pay more of this burden on my property value?
I think that kind of Brian had touched on that.
Yeah, that refers to my response in that we're only allowed to collect a specific amount, not a rate. It has to be an approved amount as well. So we can't collect more than what's approved by voters.
I think that answers that question enough. If not, come see Brian after class. All right. Next question, is it going to be Gary this time?
Sure, I'll jump in with this one. So again, this is one that came to the info at asd16.org. So the question is, it's kind of a question and a suggestion. So I might have to edit this slightly, but can you speak to the possibility of closing Post and placing all students at Haller using portables, or have all 6th graders remain at elementary schools with portables and running Haller as a 7th, 8th grade campus using portables, with sports also moving to using the high school in either case for better facilities? So there's a second part of the question too, but
Let's start with the first.
yeah,
part
sort of the first.
first.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, do you want to start with that? And then we'll ask Brian to help.
If I understand it, it's the contingency plans again. So I will state again that we would consider doing some of those contingency plans, like 6th graders going back to elementary, and 7th and 8th graders being at Haller or double shifting only if something were to happen, which is something like a fire in an area of Post where there is not a fire suppression, system there in that area, and we couldn't put students in there, or if the HVAC systems, which we have a difficult time getting parts for, because shortly after the school was built, I don't know what year it was, but someone that was on the board back when the school was built again had told us that the system that was purchased, the business went out. They went out of business. And so finding parts has been challenging for that reason, but also because of the number of years that it's been since we installed those HVAC systems. So only if we could not occupy, if there's not electrical system going on, there's not any airflow, there's an earthquake, and that building again is more challenged than any building, and we'd have to move for that reason. So we just we share those contingency plans because we want everyone to know that we have to think about those things. Because even when the community says yes for this, or we get approval to do this, move forward, whenever that is, there's still a lot of time between that line in the sand and when the school would be built. And so we just have to be thinking about what we would do in case of that. And so that's why we do that. What else, Gary?
Okay, the second part is, again, this is more of a suggestion. It says, suggestion would be to sell the property at post, then using that to finance a second story and any other additional room at Howler and running a single middle school, which Howler is a 2-story school. So I'm not sure about that part, but another suggestion would be to rezone the students to change who goes to each middle school, as it seems that the same neighborhoods of families are victimized each year. This would help make it a community need and may get more voter support. So I think it's more of a suggestion than really a response.
Yeah.
So.
In the survey that we put out in November, we had over 700 responses. The board, myself, cabinet, and other leaders in the district read every comment. We coded every idea, every comment, and kind of clustered them into themes. And that idea would be considered, a theme of contingency plans. So just the 2 ideas that we've mentioned, are just some of the ideas. But I appreciate the ideas because, we have to look at those. But right now we're focused on informing our community again about this need and moving forward with the ask.
All right, does anybody else want to add to that? That was a great list of suggestions. And yes, Howler is currently at 2 stories, but maybe the suggestion was to add a story to make it 3 stories or something. The kids would want swings at elementary schools too, but Brian keeps saying no. It's all Brian's fault. Something about liability. He loves buses. I'm sorry, it's getting late. It's past my bedtime. What's the next question?
Okay. Has there been a civil engineering assessment for the ground improvements needed to eliminate the flooding? Does the new proposal include this cost to improve the land under the new building?
That is a great question. Brian, we love you, Brian.
So the issue with the drainage system at Post would not exist if we had a new building. It would be a completely independent stormwater management system. In fact, stormwater management is a huge chunk of project development costs now. So the new system would be more robust. And by that, I mean, there would be more drains and the drains would be larger. And the area to drain into would also be larger. So there are different standards for seismic strength in buildings. There are also much more strict standards for site drainage now. So the old building does not meet the current standards for anything from a code compliance standpoint, and that building would no longer exist. So the issue would be a moot point in regards to a new structure.
Did we pay for a civil engineer? Has that been an expense?
To do what?
To look at drainage or the ground?
To address the
We
flooding?
know that
The
if
flooding?
we wanted to improve the current drainage at Post, we'd have to close several classrooms and dig into them.
So
in
then
order to-
no, we haven't paid
What-
for any civil engineers to look at drains.
We know that if we had to improve drainage at Post, we'd have to close several buildings and, several classrooms and dig into the floors, have heavy equipment inside of the courtyard. I don't know about it. We haven't established a cost for it, but we haven't gone down that path.
Has not been. Thank you. Do we have more questions? Carrie? Carrie?
Oh, Carrie, okay, I'll go.
Okay.
So again, this is more like, sorry, Matt, do you have a question?
Noticing what time it was, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So this is again the contingency plan. If you do shifts, how will you decide which kids go to, let's see, if you do shifts, how will you decide what kids do each shifts? What about sports?
We have not determined which kids go where because we haven't formalized any kind of plan yet. And sports, we've done some, not us, but previous boards in the past have done double shifting for the Arlington High School back before the new building was built. And I think that there was no sports, right? Does anybody know, Brian?
So we would have to appeal to the middle school version of the local WIAA region to modify schedules to accommodate sports. Or we'd have to have kids who are in the second shift be released from school earlier in order to attend a sporting event. From what we know about what that double shift would look like, school may still be going on after that sporting event is concluded, and they'd have to come back and continue school after that.
Question. Carrie?
Okay, if the levy passes, are the state matching funds guaranteed, or is this a grant we have to apply for?
At present, we have eligibility. If the levy passes, we have to apply for the funds. There's no question. We've got recent experience with acquiring state matching funds, and there's no question that the state would pull it back once our eligibility has been confirmed. It's not at risk after that point.
Right, Gary?
Okay, this is the last question I received. Okay. If Post is in such disrepair, how is it not shut down? I own a local childcare center, and if I had the conditions described, ventilation issues, heating issues, standing water, safety concerns, etc., I would be shut down by the health district and licensing. Do these rules not apply to schools? Who is the regulating authority? Has Post been cited for anything in recent years? And I know some of these have already been addressed, but that's the question.
I Googled that and I couldn't find any laws telling us that we have to shut down at a certain point of disrepair. I only found waivers to keep schools going if there is disrepair. So maybe Brian can answer that.
I just want to address the premise of the question that the building is in disrepair. It is not. It is functioning as it was designed. The problem is that it was not designed to meet current standards, or it's not, doesn't meet our weather conditions or seismic conditions. So it's not an issue of not being maintained and operating the way it was built. It is operating the way as it was intended to be built. So in terms of regulatory agencies, we have multiple. Department of Labor and Industries, Snohomish County Health Department are the two big ones that come to mind. They will close us if there is an imminent health hazard. It takes a long time to get there, but the conditions that we have been cited for by the health department do not meet that threshold of closure. The other big issue, again, in relation to health at Post is the presence of asbestos inside of the building. We have a certified asbestos manager on staff who does small repairs that are asbestos related. And if there's a larger asbestos type job, asbestos related job, then we have to close that part of the building while we work on that. We generally try to do that work in the summertime when students aren't present.
I hope that answers that question. Next question, Carrie.
All right, what commercial base is helping pay these levy dollars? Amazon and huge apartment complexes are within our district's borders. Are new developments that bring more students into the district contributing beyond their property taxes?
Brian, this sounds like another nerd question.
So yes, Amazon is partially within the boundaries of Arlington Public Schools. It's also within the boundaries of Marysville School District. The part that is within Arlington Public Schools does pay property taxes. Apartment buildings are not commercial buildings. They're residential buildings. They pay property taxes in the same way that any other property pays property taxes. As far as growth and how they contribute to our district's capital needs, we have an active impact fee program that we have to renew every 2 years. It's driven by the lack of available seats within our schools. Like I said before, we've met a lot of our our student seat shortages through the addition of the C wing here at the high school, and also through adding portable buildings at Eagle Creek Elementary, President's Elementary, and Kent Prairie Elementary. Those projects at Kent Prairie and Eagle Creek Elementary were both funded by impact fees. It's not the cash cow that some people may perceive it to be. For example, the total cost of those projects was about $3 million, and it took us 8 years to collect that $3 million to pay the cost of those projects.
Great question about impact fees. Thank you, Brian, for answering that. So is there only one more left? I think we can allow it. Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay. And this one may take some research and some time that we may not have available here, but can you please provide cost per square footage comparisons for state and national schools? Comparisons for both construction and remodeling. If post middle school is 102,670 square feet, the quoted remodeling cost from 2014 would be $983 per square foot. A 120,000 square foot school at $100 million is $833 per square foot. I'd like to see median comparisons at the state and national levels. These figures seem high. A brief internet search suggests these figures are 2 to 3 times the average.
That is a really good question. I don't know if we have that answer handy.
I have some of that information available. So the cost estimate of $101 million for the total cost of the project is not all building. There's also grounds redevelopment associated with that. That cannot be included in the per square foot cost calculation. The per square foot cost calculation is the per square foot cost estimate is based on the current, what's known as hard costs, which is the actual cost of constructing the building and the materials that go into it. And that's about $424 per square foot. We multiply that times a soft cost factor. Soft cost includes architectural and engineering fees, permits, and sales taxes, among other types of costs that are not necessarily the actual building itself. Those are 38% of the total cost of the building. And we also have 32% cost escalation built in for the time the levy is put forward to voters in 2025 through the time of construction in 2031. So what the cost estimate per square foot is, and I'm sorry, I can't do the math in my head for that right now, but it's 424 times 1.38 times 1.32 to account for the soft costs and the escalation costs. So I've seen this comment on social media, like, you guys are asking for way too much. My grandpa works in the construction industry, and he says that it should cost this amount. Well, it depends on what kind of building he's constructing, because it's a commercial building versus a residential building versus a school building, which has much higher construction standards than a commercial building does. And what is he talking about? Is he talking about the actual hard cost of the building, or is he talking about the total cost of the project? So this is a complicated question, but I have faith in our cost estimators that it's the Robinson Company out of Seattle. They've been doing cost estimates for public works projects for 30-something years. They have a really high standard and a high reputation in the state and the region for making really good cost estimates. So they're not trying to pull any extra money in. They're trying to make sure that we've got adequate funds available to actually perform the project when it's time to build.
And I just want to chime in, everything Brian just said is on that landing page on our website. So again, if you scan that QR code, go to the post capital levy landing page, it's under the FAQ section. It describes in all the detail, all the calculations and all that. It's all on that landing page.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Gary. Are we out of questions? I mean, we all have other questions, but are we out of questions for this meeting? All right, all done. Does anybody want to say anything? Or I want to remind everybody that our next board meeting, you're welcome to attend, is on Monday, January 27th at 6 p.m. in the district office in the boardroom. And Matt wants to say one thing really fast.
Thank you, everybody that showed up and showed interest in the building of the school, the community, the children, everything. So just appreciate you all being here tonight on your time, off time. It just shows that you guys care. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and close this meeting and say, have a good night. Drive safe.